can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blur Without Fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, today's video, I'm going to be talking about Icon vs. Hardware #1 by Reggie Hudlin, Leon Chills, Dennis Cowan, and Yasmin Flores Montañez. Both Icon and Rocket Season 1, as well as Hardware Season 1, have been kind of leading up to this moment. More specifically, one of the last times that we saw Hardware, he was looking up into the sky to see Icon flying overhead. It was one of those deals where you just knew that there was going to be some kind of a beef between them. And while I will definitely say this is one of those situations where, you know, two characters are said to be going against one another, where you have this superhero versus that superhero situation, and typically in those situations, those characters are working together and maybe only briefly having a little bit of beef with one another. This is actually going to be one of those instances, I feel, where there is legit going to be some beef going on between these two characters. Now, I will definitely say, if you go back to the old yesteryear original recipe Milestone Media comics, yes, Icon and Hardware did not always get along, but they were definitely more friendly to each other in their first meetings versus what's going on here right now. In the original comics, they had what I would say is not the most friendly of relationships. They definitely worked together, but they tried to keep their distance from one another, but they were always in contact with each other and would sometimes have what I think some people would probably refer to as very catty conversations with one another, but ultimately they were always on the same side. In this, Hardware is not necessarily reaching out to Icon for help. While he does suspect that Icon is in fact a good guy, with him having completely disrupted the entirety of the international drug trade and pretty much cleaning up crime across the entire world, Hardware pretty much understands Icon is not the problem here. But Hardware wants something that Icon has. He believes that if he could get his hands on some of Icon's technology, that he would be able to do the most good humanly possible, which this is actually not far from a plot point that happened in the original Milestone Media comics, because some of the technology that Icon had, Hardware did get his hands on in those original comics, and using some of it to bolster his own tech. In the original comics, the same inertia belt that Rocket used to give herself superpowers in those comics, Hardware had the exact same setup in his own suit, and both of those came from Icon's original ship. And while Hardware is doing research on Icon and also the government itself and their cover-ups of the existence of people like Icon, he stumbles across an old image from when Icon first landed on Earth. A black and white picture of a spaceship sitting in the middle of a plantation during the 1800s. This information leads to Hardware looking into a black site government facility where this spaceship could potentially be locked away. If Hardware can get his hands on the tech that's inside of it, he's hoping he can find something in there that can give him an edge in trying to save the world from the mistake that his former employer, Edwin Alva, had made and laid at the feet of Hardware. He just knows that there's something in Icon's ship that can turn the entire tide, but what he finds isn't necessarily a spaceship. What he finds is a method for time travel. What makes this even more interesting is that he also finds a journal by actual real-life Black legend Benjamin Banneker. Banneker is a figure in Black history I feel like more people should know about, but he was a real-life person who was not just a mathematician during a time where Black people weren't allowed to be able to read and write, much less know how to do math. He was also a scientist and astronomer, among a myriad of other things. He was probably one of the most brilliant minds in Black history of that time. Just imagine the importance of a Black man building wooden clocks in the 1700s that still worked long after the time he had passed away, calculating solar eclipses as early as 1788. Not only that, he also authored almanacs that predicted the same things like eclipses and other planetary conjunctions. Probably the only controversial thing about Benjamin Banneker that you will learn if you ever do any research into him as a person is that a lot of his accomplishments, it's hard to tell where the real ones begin and the false ones end. There's a lot of mythology around him as a person that has led to a lot of the things that he has invented or created to sometimes wind up being not exactly true or greatly embellished or just outright false altogether, but that doesn't take away all of the other accomplishments that he has made. I just think a lot of that has less to do with malice on anyone's part, but just more of being excited in the mythos of this real life person being true. But in this, Benjamin Banneker has discovered time travel, and Hardware is going to use it to try and undo the Big Bang, to stop it dead in its tracks and keep Edwin Alva from using the experimental quantum compound that was in the tear gas that was shot at all those Black Lives Matter protesters and counter-protesters that turned them into superheroes and supervillains. That is Hardware's goal here, but it's not necessarily the only thing he does. While he does actually go back and warn his past self about what was going to happen and how to stop it, this kind of leads into some really weird paradoxes that will likely come up later. You see, as it stands right now in the comics, currently, at least in the timeline before Hardware used the experimental time travel device that Benjamin Banneker was putting together, it ends up resulting in one of Alva's guards shooting at Hardware while he's wearing his Hardware armor, which is very much bulletproof. And one of the bullets ricochets and kills Edwin Alva. I have always said, whenever there is some kind of a time travel story, the thing I always bring up is that time always wants to happen. And that's exactly what's going on here. Yeah, he prevented the Big Bang for about a year. The Big Bang still happened, just not the way that it initially did. The quantum compound that was used in that tear gas was never let off at that Black Lives Matter protest. But it's not to say that it didn't get let off somewhere else. And even with Curtis Metcalf, aka Hardware, taking over Alva Industries in the wake of Edwin Alva's death, that still leaves a lot of room for something bad to happen. No matter what Curtis tries to do to prevent that quantum compound from getting out, it still gets out nonetheless. And we're not exactly told how it happens, but we know for a fact it does still happen. And to make matters even worse, he's now attracted the attention of Icon. And Icon is not made explicitly clear if he knows exactly what Hardware did or what the nature of their relationship is currently in this particular altered timeline, but whatever is going on, Icon definitely knows that Hardware is up to something. And Icon being an alien, he might have some form of resistance to the temporal effects of time travel, so it's very possible he noticed that time was changed somehow. And we know those aren't the only things that were changed. We also know that Hardware changed the life of a drug dealer that he met while he went back in time to try to figure out how to salvage his parents' relationship, because that is yet another thing that he wanted to do, is that he learned the truth about why his parents split. When Hardware's parents split up, he never understood exactly why his dad was out of the picture. He had this idealized reason in his head of why his dad was no longer in his life, but now he knows that his dad just went out and cheated, and that is why his father is no longer in his life, because his mother told him to leave and never come back. And now he knows the truth about his dad, but he uses this opportunity while not only changing the life of a drug dealer, telling him the future about how legal drug dispensaries are going to be a thing in the future, that he should get out of the illegal game now and get in later when it's actually legal to do so, rather than risking getting himself incarcerated. We don't even know who this guy is, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna learn more about what happens with him. And in the same breath, Hardware, not telling his own father who he really is, pretty much convinces him to try to stay in that child's life, changing everything. So there's multiple things Hardware's done, not just the accidental death of Edwin Alva, that's changing the whole timeline. Now there's other stuff going on too, things that I don't think are quite as important to the plot just yet. We do know that we are seeing the fruits of Icon sending Rocket off to school in Switzerland, and there's definitely some Mean Girls shenanigans going on there. We don't really know exactly where that is going to ultimately go, but I think it's safe to say Rocket is going to wind up using her inertia belt, her powers, to try and fix a situation over there, because there's a gang of girls there who are bullying the other students at the school to the point that they're committing. And they don't even seem to be repentant about it, basically telling another student who's at the funeral for the student who had committed and telling them that they're next. So I definitely think there's gonna be some stuff going on there, but I really just feel like the lion's share of this stuff is really on Icon and Hardware. I can't wait to see how this all plays out, because what I thought initially Hardware was going to do when he gained the ability to time travel was that he was going to do the thing that the character Icon always gets criticized for by a lot of Milestone's readers, is that if he existed during the time of slavery, why didn't he try to stop it? I thought that was what, Hardware was going to go do, and who's to say he's not going to try, but I feel like Hardware's not necessarily going to just take this line down. He's not just gonna let Icon pull up on him and say, hey, you're doing this and it's wrong and I don't want you doing this anymore, stop it now, and Hardware's just gonna be like, yeah, okay, all right, I'll put the genie back in the bottle. No, I don't see Hardware doing that. He's not going to do that. He is going to keep doing what he wants to do, and he doesn't really care what Icon thinks about it, because at this point, they don't really know each other particularly well yet, or at least we don't think they do. Up until this point, Icon and Hardware are only aware of one another. They've never actually spoken. There's also some things that are hinting at the Love Corps, what was formerly the Love Army, now the Love Corps. There's some things going on there, but I don't really know where that's going just yet. We just know that at some point Rocket will wind up joining that group, so that is also, I guess another reason to kind of keep an eye on what's going on the Rocket side of things here. But I do definitely feel like the lion's share of the storytelling here is largely going to be focused on Icon and Hardware. But that's pretty much everything I want to talk about with Icon versus Hardware. If you enjoyed this video, do the YouTube thing, like, share, comment, subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the videos that I put out. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers here on YouTube in 2023, and I can't do it without the help of you, Earth's mightiest subscribers of the present, as well as you, Earth's mightiest subscribers of the future. Until next time, let me know what you think about Icon versus Hardware #1. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.